Hi everyone, Elizabeth here again. It's been a lot longer since my last video than I'd intended, but I ended up getting a really bad sinus infection, and I just had really bad sinus pressure all over my face, like splitting headache down the center. Like sometimes, like it actually just hurt to like open my eyes and read and everything. So I was out and down for the count for a while. But that actually takes me to the subject of my video today, which is stuff to read, or stuff that I read anyway, when I was under the weather, really sick. I had to put my projects aside for a while, at least my serious projects aside, for a little while, and take it a little slower. And yeah, I just wanted to go over what I did during that time. I did come up with three alternative titles for this video. One is what to expect when you're expectorating. Another is as I lay sneezing. And the third was how I learned to stop worrying and love the neti pot. So those were all my alternative titles. So anyway, yeah, today I wanted to talk about three books that I looked at while I was sick. One more of a novella that I really liked. One a comedy that I very much didn't like, and the third more like a book of puzzles. And before I get into all that, though, I also wanted to just say that I've now posted, while I was sick, I also found myself on YouTube a lot. I've been on YouTube way more than I was in the past, ever since I started my own channel. And so I've made a YouTube playlist of just entitled Things to Watch When You're Under the Weather. And I just tried to put together interesting videos that you definitely want to watch, but that aren't too demanding. They're not educational in any particular way, but they're pleasant and they're fun to watch, and they're not too loud. I had a lot of like headaches while I had this sinus infection, so these are all sort of slow paced, not too loud, not too action packed, but things that are definitely entertaining. But also, it's not a big deal if you fall asleep, which I definitely did, and it's something that I wish existed when I was sick. Just something to watch, when you're tired or whatever. I've got on there, I think I've got my favorite version of Gawain and the Green Knight, my favorite movie version of Gawain and the Green Knight. I've got some animation projects, some music videos. I also put in there a televised version of the Lord Peter Wimsey series by Dorothy Parker, and I really liked those. I wanted to especially mention it though because I only posted, I think, 3 episodes, but I think there are about four in all, three parts of one episode. But I think there are 4 episodes in total, and they're really easy to find on YouTube. I just didn't want to put them all on the playlist, and they would kind of take over the playlist. And it's a really good version, and also like one of the prettiest theme songs I think I've ever seen randomly in this TV show. So for the first book is entitled The Language Lover's Puzzle Book by Alex Bellos. And this isn't really a book so much as a series of puzzles with some context about language in between, but I found it really fun in the times that I was more energetic and lucid. One thing about being sick is it can be really boring, at least for me. And so it's nice to have things that have different levels of difficulty. So when I was feeling a little better, I would work on these puzzles. Um, and what's really cool about these puzzles, as distinct from other language puzzles like crosswords and things, is it actually engages lots of different languages. So when you complete the puzzles, it's kind of a way of learning about different languages that you don't necessarily speak. So one puzzle that I thought was really fun that I think I'll show here. In the introduction, we're given a puzzle on Japanese. So I'll put that puzzle up on the screen right now and give you a little bit of time to try to solve it. And feel free to pause the video so that you can get as much time as you want. I'll be here. So I hope that was fun. I'll show you how I solved it and what the solution is right now. Okay, so given this set of things, we're looking here at the Japanese transliteration and then the English translation. Oh my gosh, it's pouring outside. I don't know if you can hear that. But anyway, we look here and we look at the translations and we see immediately that there's not going to be any one-to-one correspondence between the English and the Japanese words, because whereas in 4 of the examples we have the number 2, in English we don't have the same words popping up in the Japanese transliteration, and it's the same for all the 5 words. We don't see a single word that aligns up with 5. What we do see though is that in all of the words that have the translation of 2, we can see that there is one similarity, which is that they all have the word or the particle ni. So that seems like that has something to do with the two-ness in Japanese. And then for 5, similarly, we can see that they all have this particle or this part, go. So we're left thinking, okay, that's got something to do with 2 and 5. This is some sort of number idea. But what are these endings? Ko, han, to, mai, han, ko, mai, to. They all seem really similar, but it's not clear what these are referring to. The next thing I noticed is that because they're so similar, we've got ko, we've got han in both of them, we've got to and mai. It seems that these are not going to be the actual nouns that we're talking about. Another thing is I kind of cheated because you can see that there's sort of a similarity between the word ball and boru. So I kind of assumed that these are the nouns, and then this is some sort of number word with an ending on it. So what I looked at was, okay, we've got 4 endings here that have something to do with the concept of numbers. So we've got ko, we've got han, we've got to, and we've got mai. Now, ko comes up twice, and in one it's describing a ball, and in one it's describing apples. So we'll put ball, apple. For hon or han, I don't know how to pronounce it, we've got ropes and legs. Ropes, legs. For to, we've got horses and hippos. Okay, that seems to have an instant similarity. Those are animals. And hippos. And my paper and plates. Oops, paper and plates. Okay, so what immediately popped out at me was actually this one. This is very clearly animals. And so that makes me immediately think that what these all have in common is the concept of what they are. These are animals. So we could put to equals animals. And then I'm immediately looking for what if these other things might have something in common. So for my paper and plates, that seems like a shape issue. So I would say that my is probably like flat or circular things. So actually paper is not circular, so it's got to be flat things. For hon, ropes and legs, I'm going to say long cylindrical things. That sounds an awful lot like a cucumber. Long, possibly cylindrical. And then for ko, we've got round things. Balls and apples are round. And we're looking for 9 cucumbers. So we don't know what the word for 9 is, and we don't know what the word for cucumber is, but I'm anticipating that it's going to be something like noun. We don't know. Noun for cucumber. We can see it's curry because they all have the word curry. So we're going to put something like curry. And then we know it's going to be number, and then probably the ending hon. Okay, and we can see right here that Q is probably the word for 9 because it appears in all of the answers. So my prediction would be something like Kyori Kyuhan. And then we can come and look and we can see that, oh right, it's answer A. So I thought that was a really fun way of sort of getting into a language that you don't speak. I don't speak a word of Japanese, but it was cool to learn, oh, okay, so that's how numbers work in Japanese. You have a number particle, and then you have like a, what that thing, like a sort of a category particle, a little bit like gender in a lot of Romance languages, right? This puts it into sort of a category, but instead of it being male, female, or sometimes neuter, it seems like it has something to do with other types of categories like animate things or the shapes of things. So then we're going to have category, and putting those two together is what gives us numbers in Japanese. So now I think that's really cool. Now we know how numbers work in Japanese. And this is the very first puzzle in that book, but I'm still working through them, and there are a lot of cool insights into how other languages work. And I think it's a much cooler way of learning about it than necessarily just sort of reading through it and knowing it abstractly, but not really like working with it or knowing how it works. One thing I really like about language is that you work through it. That's what's fun about learning a language rather than just sort of reading about a language. So I thought this was really fun, and let me know if you had any other, if anyone solved this in any other more creative way. She herself includes, oh, I don't know, Alex, it could be a man or a woman. The author includes a little breakdown of the solution in the book, and mine was basically the same. So I'd be really interested to know if anyone had any more innovative ways of solving this. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you like that, you can always check out the book for more of these kinds of puzzles. Okay, and now moving on to book number 2. It's more of a novella. It's entitled A Girl in Winter by Philip Larkin. Yes, that Philip Larkin, the poet, but he did write 2 novels very early on in his life. I picked up this book because I think I just wanted a smaller, more contained narrative that was easier to read. I didn't feel like I could really appreciate anything too complex while I was sort of hacking up and coughing so much. And I really wasn't sure what to expect. I'm not very familiar with Philip Larkin's poetry other than the really famous 2 or 3 poems of his, and it felt a little funny picking it up because he himself sort of dismissed this novel later in his career. He just called it, oh, it's juvenilia. But I think he was really selling it short. I actually really enjoyed this novel. So it follows a young French woman named Catherine who has escaped France during World War II and is now living in England working at a library. We follow her over the course of a single day. But sort of in the middle of her day, we get a flashback to her time when she was about 16 years old, her only other time that she ever came to England to visit a pen pal that she had in England while she was living in France. So she comes as sort of a foreign exchange student, sort of, and it goes over her, somewhat, I wouldn't say abortive trip, but her not totally ideal trip coming to England when she was 16. So we kind of get to see who she is in the so-called present during World War II as a young woman. And then we kind of can compare that to kind of her antediluvian, so to speak, self before the war. And we can sort of see how she's become much more jaded. So during her trip, when she was in high school, she visits her pen pal. He's a boy. She can't quite decide if she likes him, not only romantically, but even as a person. He just seems extremely difficult to get to know. And it's the same with his sister. And so we can't really tell if it's because of her ability in the language, or if she just can't break through that sort of English reserve. But none of the characters ever seem to quite gel together. She just can't quite get to know these people. In a way, it almost seems like they don't really have quite a lot going on inside, or she can't break through that sort of politeness that we have when we first meet people. So in her present life, we learn that she's written to this pen pal finally, telling him that she's in England. And so in the background of her present day, she's waiting to hear back from him. I think this book is largely about misconnections, the way that we misjudge one another, the way that we can sort of miss something in other people. And in terms of how I felt about it, I really liked the writing style. Larkin has a very light touch in this. The writing is really spare. And so one thing I really liked about this was that I was sort of surprised by it. You can kind of see how a book written in sort of a breezy style about a young woman working at a library, waiting to hear from a potential romantic interest, kind of sounds like it could be sort of a romantic comedy or something. And there are moments of comedy in the book. For instance, I mean, Larkin can actually be fairly funny, and he has a good eye, clearly a very good eye for naturalistic detail. He was a poet after all. And so one example would be at one point, Catherine, which is the name of the protagonist, is taking a young girl to the dentist. Her name is Miss Green. They get on the bus to go to the dentist, and he writes, Miss Green was nearest the gangway, and the bus had become so crowded that a shopping basket swayed above her head, from which hung the end of a leak. At every movement of the owner, it tapped Miss Green's hair, but she had looked mutely in front of her and said nothing. And in a book that's so spare with its details, that strikes one as pretty funny. And so it sort of begins that way. And then you very quickly realize that this is not a breezy read. He is writing very intentionally in a very spare style, because that reflects sort of the emptiness of Catherine's world. And so it takes on this... it goes in a really different direction than I expected. I didn't actually really look that much into this book before reading, and I think that's what made the experience actually really interesting for me. It just went in a totally different, much more serious direction. Even as he has these sort of moments of levity, like with her boss. Her boss is kind of funny. He has these... naturalistic details, both about the natural world, but also about how people actually act that I really liked. Like, I remember at one point someone marks their book with a knitting needle. Yeah, that's something that people would do, right? I've never seen anyone do it, but it's such a good little detail that he included. And so, yes, the book is light on description, but you can kind of tell it's written by a poet because of the details he chooses to include. So when we have so few details, the details that are included really stand out. So when, for instance, Catherine is still with that same girl taking her to the dentist. So here's a typical description of something he would write. So we have she, that's Miss Green, bent to drink again, and Catherine saw as she raised her head afterwards that she was gasping at the chill of the water and half smiling, the tiny hairs around her mouth wet. Catherine, who ever since she had got up that morning had been thinking of the Fennels and herself with increasing excitement, was suddenly startled to sympathy for her. Till then she had only seen her ugliness, her petulance, her young pretensions. Now this faded to unimportance, and she grasped for the first time that she really needed care, that she was frail and in a remote way beautiful. It was so long since she had felt this about anyone that it came with unexpected force. Its urgency made her own affairs, concerned with what might or might not happen, bloodless and fanciful. And so I think that's a really good example of these minute details in an otherwise very, very undetailed, in a way, narrative that's mostly very internal really sticks out. The little hairs on her mouth, the very, very cold water. These, you can just tell it's written by a future poet. And I thought that was sort of interesting. Knowing as we do that Larkin becomes a poet, maybe I'm reading too far back into it, but I think that you can see hints that Larkin would make a great poet. And on top of that, there's also sort of great detail paid to the natural world too. We can see from Larkin's writing that the natural world is also very important to him. So another excerpt, just to give you a feel for Larkin's style, is through the light mist, she could see the ornamental front of the town hall under the flat shield of the sky, dark and ledged with snow. But all the white-gray patches were not snow, for as she watched, they revealed themselves as pigeons, a score of them launching off into the air and hanging with a great clapping of wings. Then the whole flight dropped, rose over the intervening trees across the traffic, and landed on a stretch of snow not 15 yards from where the two of them sat, coming up as if they expected to be fed. So I can say pretty unreservedly that I really like the style, the spare style of this book, and I hope that some of these extracts gave you a little bit of a taste of what it's like to read. It's very short, but it also just packs this incredible emotional punch that I was very surprised by. The ending is absolutely heart-wrenching. It haunted me for a couple of days. I was not expecting... It was absolutely devastating, and in a good way. It was earned, and it made sense in the context. But wow, when Larkin wants to, he can really get you like right there. So I really liked this book. Ultimately, it's sort of a very pessimistic book. You have to be sort of in the right mindset to read it. It's sort of I think ultimately you kind of come to the conclusion from the book that it's sort of showing the opposite of, nothing human is alien to me. It's sort of these people just crying out into the darkness, absolutely isolated, and unable to connect despite the similarity of their sufferings. And it's tremendously painful, but very, very well worth reading. It's really short, so if you find yourself with a weekend or something, very easy to read this. And for how few pages it has an outsized emotional impact. At least it did for me. At the end. So I can really recommend that book. And so for the third book, something completely different, I read What in God's Name by Simon Rich. I picked this up because I wanted something really light, really funny, kind of the opposite of A Girl in Winter. I think I just wanted something light, funny. You can eat popcorn while eating it, while reading it, And so I picked up this book because I saw that the writer had written for The New Yorker, for Pixar, for Saturday Night Live. I think he wrote for McSweeney's, and he was a finalist for the Thurber Prize for American Humor. So I thought, okay, this is going to be really, really funny. And the premise really appealed to me, I think because I just loved the TV show The Good Place. And so it's got a similar premise, which is... we're up in heaven. Heaven is run as a corporation. God is the CEO. He's rather uncaring and sort of checked out. And he's threatening to destroy the earth in favor of a much more interesting project to him, which is opening an Asian fusion restaurant. And so we zoom in on the plight of two angels who need to get two human beings, two particularly pathetic human beings, to fall in love in order to save the cosmos, because they've made a deal with God that if they can get these two to fall in love, God won't destroy the earth. So I thought that sounded really, really funny. But wow, it was really disappointing. It was not funny even a little bit. It was written really terribly, I felt. I mean, I was shocked. I'm really sorry if this is someone's like favorite book, but I just thought it was terribly written. The dialogue was really, really stilted. I haven't read dialogue that sort of bad in a long time, I guess. It was sort of shockingly bad, and it had a lot of like arbitrary cursing that made it seem that was not natural, that made it seem even more awkward. And it was sort of pitched at almost sort of like a fourth grade level, and it was accompanied by sort of fourth grade morality too. I guess I was sort of expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but yeah, it was sweet. It had a really sweet heart. I can say that. It was sweet that the whole thing was like a little cute little love story, but it was very much not anything that I enjoyed. I'm not really sure why I finished it. I guess I kept thinking like it'll get funny soon or it'll get better. And that was very much not my experience. And so I feel so bad getting down on it. It is more like, it was more like sort of reading TV. It felt very much like a TV pilot, and it was a little bit like reading TV. And I think the saving grace of TV is that it has visuals. So TV comes across very differently from books and reading, and I think it just didn't quite translate. And I think I could tell that this was someone who had written for TV, and it just somehow didn't really, it was a little, I guess I could say it was a bit simplistic. It needed a little bit more going on to sustain a narrative properly. So but I don't want to go on about that book too much. The reason I even wanted to talk about it, I usually wouldn't have, but the reason I kind of wanted to talk about it was because I wanted to maybe open up a conversation about comedy in writing. So most funny things that I've read in books are a little bit like The Girl in Winter, where there are funny parts in an otherwise serious narrative. But yeah, I was wondering more about comedy in writing, why it's so rare, why we don't seem to really value it much. I think it's really, really difficult to be funny in writing, which might actually be why it's so rare. And I was wondering if anyone had any ideas for funny books. I've read the classics, I guess. I've read Three Men in a Boat. I've read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I love The Cow That Wants to Be Eaten in the Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I don't remember how many of the Douglas Adams books I read, but I think I read like 3 or 4 of them, not all of them. And I read the Dirk Gently books, so I think Douglas Adams is kind of covered for me, but I was wondering if anyone knew of any other books or wanted to recommend any other books that are just straight out funny. So not something that's funny in between, but actually meant to be funny, because I think it's actually interestingly difficult to do, actually, and something we don't think about often because we sort of think that real literature needs to be really serious, but I think it can be actually really challenging and a sign of real talent to make people laugh. So I was wondering if anyone wanted to share any details, any books that they wanted to share that are funny, that are good to read when you're just wanting something lighter, something that can, for instance, if you're sniffling in bed with a sinus infection, it's nice to have something funny every so often. So that's all I had to say for today. I hope you're all doing well. I wish a sinus infection on absolutely no one. I hope you're all well and happy and thriving. And I hope the weather is a lot better where you are than where I am. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.